I still hear the gunshots. Even now, weeks later, I wake up sweating, my ears ringing like the fight is still happening, like the bullets never stopped flying. But it wasn't the shootout that got to me. It was what came after. Call that changed everything. I'd been on the force for 8 years, long enough to know that most nights were routine. A couple of domestic disputes, the occasional drunk driver, nothing like what you see in the movies. That night, I was paired with Officer David Rains. Good cop, good shot, gooder friend. We'd been partners for almost 3 years, and in all that time, we'd never once fired our weapons in the line of duty. That was about to change. The call came in just after midnight. 103 and 107, possible 459 in progress, 624 Hollow Creek Road, homeowners out of town. Neighbor reports seeing 3 subjects inside, a home invasion. Hollow Creek was an old, isolated neighborhood on the edge of town, big houses, long driveways, lots of trees. Perfect place for someone to break in and take their time. 103 responding, I said, flipping on my lights. 107 responding, Rains added. Neither of us knew we were driving straight into a nightmare. When we pulled up, the place looked dark. The only light came from the neighbor's porch across the street. The house itself was a 2-story colonial, the kind that probably cost a fortune back in the day. Now, it sat quiet, windows gaping like empty eye sockets. There were no cars in the driveway, no signs of movement. But the front door? It was open. Rains and I exchanged a look. I radioed in. 103 and 107 on scene. Front doors open. Possible forced entry. No answer. Just static. I tried again. Dispatch, you copy. Nothing. Just that thick, suffocating silence. Then, from inside the house, a gunshot. We moved fast. Guns drawn, flashlights cutting through the dark. The first thing I noticed was the smell dust, old wood, and something sharp, metallic. Blood. Then we saw him. A man in dark clothes, crouched near the staircase, a pistol clutched in his hands. "Police!" I shouted. "Drop your weapon!" He didn't. He turned and fired. The shot missed by inches, splintering the doorframe behind me. Everything after that happened in flashes. The thunder of gunfire, muzzle flashes lighting up the dark. Someone screaming. The man near the stairs collapsed, a dark stain spreading across his chest. But there were more. Footsteps upstairs. A second shooter appeared in the hallway. Another exchange of gunfire, short, violent. Then silence. It was over. At least, that's what I thought. We cleared the house, stepping over broken glass, overturned furniture. The whole place felt wrong. We found the second suspect in the hallway, shot twice, already gone. But the third? He wasn't there. 103. Suspect may have fled on foot. Rains said into his radio. Still nothing. Just that dead static. Then we heard it, from somewhere deeper in the house. A door creaking. We turned as one, flashlights sweeping the hallway. There, at the far end, a door stood slightly open. The basement. I don't know why, but something about it made my stomach knot. Like stepping through that door would be a mistake. A really, really big mistake. But we had no choice. So we went in. The stairs groaned under our weight. The air grew colder with every step. At the bottom, our lights caught concrete walls, old wooden shelves, and a door. Not some cheap wooden door, steel door. It didn't belong in a basement. It belonged in a prison. No handle, no lock, just a solid sheet of metal. That's when I saw the blood. A thin line of it seeping from under the door. And something else. A handprint smeared across the metal. Fresh, dripping. Rain swallowed. "You seeing this?" I nodded. Then, from the other side of the door, something knocked. I can't describe the sound. It wasn't a fist. It was softer, like something pressing against the door from the inside. I stepped closer, my pulse hammering. "Police. If you're in there, open up." Silence. Then, a whisper, too soft to hear, but I swear to God, it knew my name. Rains grabbed my arm. "We need to go." He was right. Something about that door, about this whole house, felt wrong in a way I can't explain. We backed away, moving toward the stairs. Then, the door opened, just a crack, and something peeked out. I only saw it for a second. Pale skin, hollow eyes, a mouth that stretched too wide, too dark, and the hand, still dripping blood. Then the door slammed shut. We ran. Back up the stairs, through the ruined hallway, straight for the front door, except it wasn't there. The walls stretched, warping, twisting. The house had changed. And the whispers, they were everywhere. Some laughing, some begging. I grabbed reins. This isn't real. It's not real. Then a voice, soft, right behind me. No one leaves the house. The last thing I remember. Rains screaming, then darkness. I woke up in my cruiser. Morning sunlight burned my eyes. The house was gone. Not abandoned, not empty, just gone, like it had never been there. I checked my radio. It worked. 103 to dispatch. Do you copy? 103. Go ahead, came the reply. Clear as day. Did you log our call to 624 Hollow Creek? A pause. There is no 624 Hollow Creek. I checked the police database. No record of a call. No record of a shootout. Nothing. Except one file. From 30 years ago. An old case. A home invasion gone wrong. 3 dead suspects. 2 missing officers. Their names? David Rains. And mine. I want to tell myself I imagined it. That the stress, the exhaustion, the years of seeing the worst of humanity finally took their toll. But every time I close my eyes, I see him. Standing in the dark. Waiting. I've been a cop for 11 years. I've seen some things. Murders, suicides, things people do to each other that no sane person should ever have to witness. But nothing ever stayed with me. Not like this. It started with a welfare check. The call came in from a woman who hadn't heard from her brother in over a week. Said he lived alone in a small apartment on the east side of town. Never missed a phone call. Never went anywhere without telling her. Dispatch sent me and my partner, Officer Jake Willis, to check it out. I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary. People go missing all the time. Usually drugs, sometimes suicide. Sad but routine. This wasn't routine. We arrived at the building, a crumbling 3-story complex that smelled like piss and stale beer. The kind of place where the hallways are dim even when the lights work. Apartment 3B. The door was locked, but no sounds inside. We knocked, called out his name. Nothing. Then Willis tried the knob again, harder. It opened. The smell hit me first. Not just death, something worse, something wrong. We stepped inside, guns drawn. And there he was. A man in his late 30s, sitting in a wooden chair in the middle of the living room, his back to us. Not moving, skin pale, stretched thin, a hole carved into his chest. A perfect circular void, right where his heart should have been, but no blood, no mess, just emptiness. Like something had reached inside and taken whatever was supposed to be there. I've seen dead bodies before. The human mind learns to process them, to detach. But this? I couldn't process it. Willis moved first. He circled the chair, checking the guy's face. Then he stopped, stared, didn't speak. Jake? I asked. He didn't respond. Didn't move. Just stared. Then, a whisper. Soft, wrong. Right in my ear. Do you see him? I spun around, gun raised. Nothing. Just the empty apartment. But something felt off. Like I wasn't alone. Like someone else was there, watching. I turned back to Willis. He blinked, shook his head. Then, without a word, he walked out. I followed. Neither of us spoke until we were outside, the night air burning our lungs. What the hell was that? I finally asked. Willis lit a cigarette with shaking hands. I don't know, he said, but we shouldn't have gone in there. The case didn't make sense. No signs of forced entry. No defensive wounds. No cause of death the coroner could determine. And the hole? No tool marks. No surgical precision. Just emptiness, like something had erased part of him from existence. Willis refused to talk about it. Said he didn't want to think about it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Then the dream started. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding. I'd see him, standing in my bedroom, a tall, thin figure, dressed in black. No face, just a hole where his face should been, like the man in the chair, like something had reached inside and taken it. I'd blink, and he'd be gone. Just a dream. That's what I told myself. Until I saw him at work. It was a week after we found the body. I was sitting at my desk, trying to ignore the exhaustion creeping in, when something made me look up. A figure standing at the far end of the precinct. Tall, thin, motionless, watching. But when I focused, he wasn't there. Just an empty hallway. It happened again in the locker room, in the parking lot, even in my own house. A shape in the doorway, a figure in the mirror, gone the second I looked directly at it. I wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating. I started hearing the whisper again. Do you see him? And then, one night, I did. I woke up gasping. The room was wrong. Too quiet, too still. And then I saw him, at the foot of my bed, closer than before. I could see the hole where his face should have been. Dark, endless. A void pulling me in. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. Then, he reached for me. A long, thin hand, fingers stretching, impossibly long, moving inside me, reaching into my chest, gripping something that wasn't physical, and pulling. It was like being drained, like something inside me was being ripped away. I tried to fight, tried to scream. Then, a voice. Don't look at him. And just like that, I could move. I rolled off the bed, gasping, scrambling away. When I looked back, he was gone, but I knew he wasn't finished with me. The next day, I called Willis, told him everything. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, finally, you looked, didn't you? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He exhaled. He's going to take something from you. What is he? I asked. A long pause. I don't know, he admitted, but he's real. I waited for him to say more, but the line went dead. And the next day, Willis didn't show up for work. They found him in his apartment, sitting in a chair, a hole in his chest, not a mark on him, like something had reached inside and taken whatever made him him. I don't sleep much anymore. I don't look into dark corners because I know he's still there, watching, waiting, and every so often, in the silence, I hear it, that voice, soft. Ron, do you see him? I still don't know how it happened. I don't know who was on the other end of that call, and I sure as hell don't know how I'm supposed to live with what I heard. But I do know one thing. It wasn't human. I've been a cop for nearly 10 years, mostly patrol, with a couple of years in homicide before I transferred back. I liked the routine of it, kept me sane, until that night. It was just past 2 a.m., and my shift was almost over. I was parked in a quiet lot, sipping shitty gas station coffee, half listening to the radio. Then, the dispatch came through. Unit 217. Respond to a 911 call at 309 Renshaw Street. Possible break-in. Caller disconnected. I frowned. 309 Renshaw had burned down almost a year ago. There was nothing there but a gutted frame of a house, boarded up windows, and a for sale sign nobody ever took down. I radioed back. Dispatch, you sure about that address? That house was condemned. Status, then, confirmed, 217. Call originated from a landline at 309 Renshaw. Please respond. I stared at the radio. A landline? There was no landline in that house. There was no house. But protocol was protocol. I started the engine and headed toward Renshaw Street. The street was empty when I pulled up, but something felt off. The air was thick, too still, too silent. And then I saw it. The house. Standing exactly as it had been before the fire. Not a single scorch mark, not a single board out of place. My stomach twisted. I knew what I was looking at. I remembered the fire. I was there when they pulled the bodies out. But now, the house looked like it had never burned at all. I grabbed my radio. Dispatch, be advised 309 Renshaw it's intact. That's not possible, but it's here. Silence. Then, Unit 217. Repeat your last transmission. I swallowed. The house, it's here. More silence. Then, standby 217. I let out a shaky breath and stepped out of the car. The porch creaked under my boot. Everything about the house felt real. The chipped paint on the door, the rusted handle, the faint scent of old wood. I knocked once. No answer. Then, a ringing phone. From inside, I stiffened. There shouldn't be a phone in there. But I heard it. A landline. The kind with an actual bell. I tried the door. It swung open. The house was dark, dusty, but not abandoned. Furniture sat untouched, like someone had just stepped out for groceries. And in the hallway, a small wooden table. On top of it, an old rotary phone, ringing. I picked it up. This is Officer Daniels with the police department. Who am I speaking with? Silence. Then, a whisper. Why are you in my house? My pulse hammered. The voice was soft, female, but wrong, off. Like a recording that had been slowed down. This house is abandoned, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a fire here a year ago. No one lives here anymore. Silence. Then, you were here the night it happened. I stopped breathing, because I had been. I was one of the first responders. Who is this? I demanded. No answer. Just breathing, soft, shallow. Then, turn around. Every hair on my body stood up. I turned. The hallway behind me stretched into darkness. Nothing there, but something felt wrong. The air had changed, like I wasn't alone anymore. I stepped back, and then, a soft creak from upstairs. I snapped my gun up. This is the police. If someone's up there, come down now. Silence. Then another creak, slow, deliberate, coming closer. I took a step toward the stairs, and then the lights flickered on. Not old, buzzing bulbs. Not the dim glow of a generator. No, every light in the house blazed on at once, like the house was alive again, and in that sudden, burning brightness, I saw the figure at the top of the stairs, thin, still, not human, no features, just darkness where a face should be. And when it moved, I felt it, like something reaching inside me, something cold, something hungry. I turned and ran. I didn't stop running until I was in my cruiser, gasping for breath. The house was dark again, no lights, no sound, just an empty, burned-out shell, exactly how it should have been. I grabbed my radio with shaking hands. Dispatch, I need backup at 309 Renshaw. There's something, Daniels? I froze, because the voice on the radio wasn't dispatch. It was the same voice from the phone, the same whisper. You shouldn't have come back. The radio went dead. I threw the car into reverse, tires screeching. Didn't stop until I was miles away. I filed my report, but when I checked dispatch records, there was no 911 call, no record of me being sent there, no landline at 309 Renshaw, because the phone had melted in the fire a year ago. But I know what I heard, what I saw, and I know one thing for certain. Someone, or something, called me there that night, and whatever it was, it's still waiting. The worst calls come at night. I don't mean the ones where some drunk crashes into a pole, or when a domestic dispute turns violent. Those are bad, sure, but they make sense. You can predict human stupidity, prepare for it. But every cop will tell you there are calls that don't make sense, calls that stick with you, calls that don't fit into a report neatly. This is mine. My name's Detective Alex Carter. Been on the force 15 years, worked homicide for 7. I've seen what people do to each other. That kind of thing doesn't scare me anymore. What scares me is the stuff I can't explain. It started with a 911 call at 2:13 a.m. The dispatcher flagged it as suspicious circumstances. Normally, I wouldn't have responded, patrol handles those, but something about it caught my attention. The call came from a landline. That's rare enough these days. Even stranger, the number was tied to an abandoned house on the outskirts of town. I listened to the recording on the way. 911, what's your emergency? A long pause. Then, a voice, weak, whispery. He's watching me. Who's watching you, sir? Silence, just faint breathing. Sir, can you tell me where you are? The voice came back, barely above a whisper. I'm in the walls. The dispatcher asked more questions, but the caller never responded again, just more breathing. Then the line went dead. We traced the number, and that's how I ended up parked outside an old, rotting house on Holloway Road. It was a 2-story Victorian, the kind that probably looked nice 100 years ago, but had long since been swallowed by neglect. The windows were boarded up, the front door sagging. A for sale sign lay face down in the overgrown grass, forgotten. I stepped out of my car, radioed in. Unit 31, at location. No signs of forced entry, checking perimeter. Copy that, 31. Keep us updated. The air was thick, humid. The kind of night where the silence feel insulae. The kind of night where the silence, I walked around the house, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. No broken windows, no footprints in the dirt. Then I saw it. The back door was open. Not kicked in, Not broken, just slightly ajar, like someone had left in a hurry. I drew my gun. Police. My voice sounded too loud in the stillness. If anyone's inside, make yourself known. Nothing. I pushed the door open with my foot, stepped inside. The stench hit me first: mildew, rot, something faintly metallic. The kitchen was empty except for a rusted-out fridge and a pile of dead leaves blown in from outside. That's when I heard it. A faint scratching sound, coming from inside the walls. I turned, my pulse hammering in my ears. It was soft, almost rhythmic, like something was moving just behind the plaster. A rat, I told myself. Or raccoons, that's all. But then came the whisper, "Help me." I froze. It wasn't coming from a room. It was coming from inside the goddamn walls. I swallowed, gripping my gun tighter. Who's there? No answer, just more scratching. Slow, deliberate. I followed the sound down the hall, past a crumbling staircase. The house, The house while Bawari. The house while Nafsawan scant. Then, ahead of me, I saw a door, slightly ajar, leading to the basement. The scratching was coming from below. I did not want to go down there, but I'd heard a voice, and that meant I had to. The stairs creaked under my weight. The air grew colder, damper. My flashlight flickered as I reached the bottom. The basement was unfinished, just dirt floors, exposed beams, and a rusted boiler against the far wall. And then I saw the hole. A gaping hole in the wall, jagged and dark. The edges were lined with deep scratches, like someone had clawed their way through the wood and plaster. I swallowed hard, stepping closer. The scratching had stopped. I crouched, shining my light into the hole. It was deep, too deep, like the house had been built around something much older. The dirt inside was disturbed, tunneled through, and then, from the darkness, a face. Pale, gaunt, wide black eyes staring at me from the void. I fell backward, nearly dropping my gun. My flashlight trembled in my grip as the thing in the hole twitched, its head cocking unnaturally to one side. Then it spoke. "He put me here." My breath caught. The voice, it was the same one from the call. "He put me in the walls, and now he's coming back." A rush of static erupted from my radio, deafening. I scrambled to turn it off, my fingers fumbling, and then footsteps from upstairs. Heavy, deliberate. Someone else was in the house. I bolted up the stairs, my gun raised. "Police, show yourself." Nothing. The house was empty. But the front door, it was open. I ran outside, scanning the yard, the street. No movement, no cars, just suffocating silence. I called for backup, searched every inch of that house. We found no one. No signs of forced entry. No landline in the house, just old, cut wires. No records of any previous owners matching the voice on the tape. And when we checked the basement again, the hole was gone. Just a solid wall, as if it had never been there. The official report called it a prank call, a false alarm. But I still have the tape, and sometimes, late at night, I play it back. Not because I need to hear the voice, but because, sometimes, if I listen closely, I hear something else breathing on the line.